Andrea Hampton didn't call a press conference. She didn't hand a statement to a gospel journalist or let a publicist shape her words before they reached anyone. What she said came out the way real things usually come out, quietly in a room full of people she trusted, with no script and no safety net, and when she finished speaking, the room went still in a way that had nothing to do with shock and everything to do with recognition. The people who heard her understood immediately that they were standing inside a moment that had been a long time coming, and that the woman in front of them had earned every word she was finally allowing herself to say. Wes Hampton has been one of the defining voices of the Gaither Vocal Band since 2005, and what Andrea confirmed about the season this family has been walking through reshapes everything his closest fans thought they understood about what they were hearing when he sang. Wes stepped into the Gaither Vocal Band carrying a weight of expectation that would have buckled a lesser singer. The group had already produced Michael English and Guy Penrod, two tenors whose names fans spoke with a particular kind of reverence, and within a few years, Wes Hampton's name had joined that company. His voice holds something that resists easy description, a purity and an unguarded openness that makes a room full of 10,000 people feel like something private is being shared between two people alone. When he steps to the microphone on songs like I've Just Seen Jesus or The Anchor Holds, something shifts in the air that training and technique alone cannot account for. People reach for whoever is sitting next to them. People weep without quite knowing why they started. That is ministry doing exactly what it was always designed to do. For the millions of fans who discovered the Gaither homecoming world through those beloved video recordings, who watched them on Saturday mornings or pressed play in hospital rooms because nothing else reached the right place inside them, Wes Hampton became part of the soundtrack of their faith. Not a celebrity performing for an audience, but a companion showing up when he was needed most. And that's when the questions started, gradually at first, and then with a persistence that love made impossible to dismiss. The first signs were subtle enough that loyal fans pushed back against their own concern. A comment here about Wes looking tired, a thread there about whether he seemed fully himself at a recent taping, and the people who raised those observations were careful and tender about it, the way you are when the subject is someone you genuinely care about, rather than someone you're looking to catch in something. What separated this concern from ordinary gossip was its source entirely. These weren't people hunting for scandal. These were people who had prayed alongside this man through speakers and screens for 2 decades, and they wanted to know if he was all right. That question never stopped coming because real love doesn't let it stop. Wes kept showing up through all of it. Every performance, every homecoming taping, every stage he walked onto, he brought the same warmth and poured everything available into every song. But the people who had watched him longest, who remembered his most vibrant early years with the group, sensed that something heavy was being carried underneath the music. The smile was real. The worship was real. And still something lived beneath both of those things that the songs couldn't quite conceal, and Andrea Hampton stood beside him through every single day of it. Here's the thing about Andrea that anyone who knows this family will confirm quickly. She is not someone who courts public attention or uses her husband's platform to build one of her own. By every account from people inside their circle, she carries a deep and steady faith and the kind of character that only fully reveals itself under pressure, which means the past several years have revealed it considerably. What she confirmed when she finally spoke in her own community of faith among people she trusted was that Wes has been navigating a serious health journey, one that required far more from him and from their family than anyone outside their closest circle had been permitted to understand. People who were present when Andrea spoke described her words as carrying none of the bitterness that a long, hard road can put into a person's voice, and none of the unanchored fear that comes from carrying something with no place to set it down. What remained was the language of a woman who had prayed through something real and arrived not at easy resolution, but at the kind of peace Paul described in Philippians as surpassing understanding, the kind that makes no sense from the outside but is unmistakable when you're standing in its presence. She confirmed that Wes pushed through performance commitments during periods when many people facing his situation would have stepped back entirely, and the decision to keep showing up came from conviction rather than obligation. Wes Hampton believes with the kind of faith that goes all the way down that what he carries to those stages matters, that the people in those rooms and watching those recordings need what he brings in the music, and no health challenge has been able to move him off that conviction. Andrea also confirmed something Wes himself had touched on carefully in various settings over the years, that his faith has been tested in this season in ways that have reshaped it. Not broken it, reshaped it the way metal comes out of fire, harder in some places and more honest about what it actually is. Anyone who has followed Wes closely will hear that and feel the truth of it immediately, because the voice coming through in recent years carries something it didn't carry in 2005 or 2008 or even 2012. Weight lives in it now. Earned weight, the particular kind that only arrives after a person has walked through something and emerged on the other side, still standing, still believing the words they're singing. Fellow Gaither artists have known more than they've said publicly, which is exactly as it should be, because these are people who understand that a stage is a sanctuary, and a confidence belongs to the person who gave it. Mark Lowry, who has never been a man to hold back when something genuinely moves him, has called Wes Hampton one of the finest human beings he has ever shared a stage with. And coming from someone who has shared stages with virtually everyone in gospel music, that is not a casual compliment. David Phelps, who understands as well as anyone alive what it means to have your voice and your health and your calling intersect in complicated and sometimes frightening ways, has spoken warmly and specifically about Wes over the past several years, and between these two tenors there exists a mutual regard built on something deeper than professional courtesy. Both men have had to place the instrument God gave them into God's hands and wait without knowing what the answer would be, and that shared experience creates a bond that no interview can fully capture. The gospel community responded to Andrea's confirmation with everything that is best about this particular world. Prayer came first, then letters and notes of gratitude poured in from people describing specific moments when one of Wes's recordings found them in a dark place and served as the thing that kept them going, kept them believing, kept them connected to a faith they were close to releasing. The Gaither homecoming community doesn't always get everything right, but this it does with uncommon grace. It shows up for its own. Bill Gaither built his entire ministry on a specific theological conviction that the gospel travels farthest when carried by broken and mended and still mending human beings who have earned the right to sing what they're singing. Polished performers have their place, but testimony has always been the engine the homecoming world runs on. When Michael English navigated the most painful and public failure of his career in the mid-1990s, Bill and Gloria Gaither did not cut him loose. They waited. They prayed. When Michael was ready to come back, the door stood open, and that was not sentiment or good public relations. That was a theological conviction lived out in the way an organization actually operates when nobody is watching for the good press it might generate. Wes Hampton's situation is entirely different in nature, a health journey rather than a public failure, but the principle underneath how the Gaither world operates holds the same. People are not interchangeable. Voices are not replaceable, and the relationship between an artist and this ministry, when it is genuine, as Wes Hampton's clearly is, does not dissolve under the weight of difficulty. What this reveals about faith, the particular kind that sustains a person through a long and uncertain season with no guaranteed outcome and no clear timeline, is something this community understands without needing it spelled out. Everyone who has sat in a homecoming audience or pressed play alone in a dark room has known a season where continuing was the only act of faith available, where the valley showed no sign of ending, and the only honest thing to do was take one more step. Wes has been living that season. Andrea has been living it alongside him, and the fact that both of them did so without demanding recognition, without centering the struggle in the platform, speaks to a depth of character that deserves to be named plainly. The world celebrates arrivals. Stages get built for the healed testimony, the comeback story, the standing ovation delivered from the far side of the valley. But the continuing, the quiet daily decision to place one foot in front of the other when the valley has not ended, that is the part of the faith walk that audiences rarely see. Wes Hampton has been living that part for years, bringing it onto every stage, letting it move through every note, giving it to people who needed it without ever making them feel the weight of what it cost him to show up. And that changes how you hear the songs. When a man stands on a platform and sings about the faithfulness of God, and you know something of what it cost him to stand there that day, the encouragement no longer comes from someone untouched by doubt. It comes from someone who has doubted, who has pressed through the doubt, who showed up anyway and meant every word. That is the testimony reaching the places in people where nothing easier can go, and it is exactly the kind of witness Bill Gaither spent 5 decades making space for on the homecoming stage. Whatever comes next for Wes and his family, the gospel community will watch with the faithfulness of people who have been given a reason to care and intend to honor it. The road ahead for his health, for his voice, for his continued place in the Gaither Vocal Band, none of those questions carry settled answers yet, and perhaps that unresolved quality is the most honest place to land. Because faith, as Wes Hampton has lived it and as Andrea Hampton confirmed it, was never built on certainty. Continuing is what it has always asked of them, and continuing is not a small thing. Wes Hampton's story is not finished. The voice that has stopped rooms and carried testimony through seasons heavier than any of us knew still has songs left to sing, and the people who have followed this ministry for decades hold that conviction without wavering, grounded in what they have already seen from a man who chose to keep singing and a woman who chose to speak when the time finally came.